Now, the population has declined seriously. It's 1/3 what it was 100 years ago. On the other hand, the amount of people living in each dwelling has also considerably dropped. I found statistics showing 20 people living in one house, small house. This is the market square. It's very pleasant today. It's the scene of a great deal of suffering during the Second World War. It looks very typical of a Jewish community in Poland, even though many of these houses have been done up or are in fact new. The street up there has a small museum of Jewish life. It's privately owned, and one needs to contact the owner to actually see it. That building in front is the Synagogue, which dates to around 1860. It was vandalized considerably by the Nazis, and after the war it was used as a store. It was done up though in the 1950s. It was saved from destruction, but you can see from it's a pretty large building. You don't see many synagogues of that size in Poland, and you've got some of the locals drinking outside it. This shows the rear of the synagogue. The synagogue was built on the site of a former one, a wooden one. The land here behind it was the cemetery. Now, it's quite unusual to have a synagogue and a cemetery next to each other. The local Jewish population was given this land, and sometime historically. So the Jewish community also owned other buildings which it constructed in the first years of Polish independence, which were in this area. There was also a library. The communists also had a library somewhere around here, I don't quite know where, even though the Communist Party was actually illegal in Poland as from 1926. It was quite difficult for everybody in the interwar period, but particularly for Jews. Here in 1927 there was a police chief turned up. I don't quite know how he was appointed, but he seems to be a pretty nasty character, because he would actually insult people in the streets. He would have set his dog on people. For example, there was a Jewish boy who's 12 years old who was later in need of serious medical treatment because the police officer had set his dog on him. In another case, there was the police officer attacked somebody, a group of people, including one Mr. Greenblum. And Mr. Greenblum then took the police commandant to court. Now, another policeman had actually asked the commandant to stop hitting the Jews, but he just ignored them. Now, Mr. Greenblum was summoned to see the police commandant and was warned if he didn't drop his legal case, then he would face serious problems. Mr. Greenblum went ahead. However, the irony here is that the judge then fined Mr. Greenblum, and he got a 2,000 zloty fine for not showing sufficient respect to a Polish police officer. Now, 2,000 zlotys was then a great deal of money. To give you an idea what you could do with that, I mean, a good cow would cost between 200, 300 zlotys, something like that. A very good horse would cost about 1,000 zlotys, so it's like the cost of 2 very good horses. Diesel then cost, if I recall correctly, I think it was 46 groszy a litre, wherein petrol was about 70 groszy a litre. So that gives you you could buy 4,000 litres of diesel, for example. This is the market square. scene of great tragedy. I mean, it seemed very difficult on a lovely summer's day like today, when there's a wedding going on, there's ice cream being sold, there's people going into the shops, but and there's the strange noise from the fountain in front of me. When the war started, there were roughly 3,100 Jews in Klimontów, but this was added to refugees, particularly those that came from the area of Rouge. It's quite normal for people to leave larger towns and then to seek residence in smaller villages, because they thought they would hide better, if you like, in smaller villages. Also, they would be able to get access to food. People were frightened of living in the cities and the hunger that happened there. Now, I believe that Klimontów was occupied by the Germans on the 9th of September. There are other dates, such as 11th or the 13th of September, which have been given, but I believe it was the 9th, and I believe that based on the location of German units in the area, so though I could be wrong, and I might actually change my mind about that. What happened was when the Germans arrived sometime around 1400, in the afternoon, they gathered all the males of between 14 to 60 and they kept them in this square. And the German Wehrmacht commander warned them that German units were going to be passing through, and for them not to do anything. And if anything happened, then the entire population would suffer. They were kept here about 3 hours, and then they were dismissed. This was both Jewish and Catholic, although of course the majority of the population was Jewish anyway. However, as they allowed people to disperse, some shots were fired and 3 people died, 2 Jews and 1 Catholic peasant. Whilst under military occupation, many of the shops that we see around here now were actually plundered by Wehrmacht troops. Now, towards the end of October 1939, civilian rule became, so it was no longer under military occupation. And one of the very first things that did happen was that they were ordered to form a Judenrat, a Jewish council, and which was done. And now in Sandomierz, the local occupation authorities seized 10 people and demanded a ransom of 100,000 zloty, which had to be paid by the Jewish communities. 12,500 zloty had to be paid by people from Klimontów. And if this money was not paid, then the people who were taken hostage would be murdered. The money was collected and the hostages were released. Now, hostages weren't always released. It was quite common for the Nazis just to murder the hostages. German troops took up residence in the town. They were located next to the monastery. See there, the church. Here's the Dominican monastery, the former Dominican monastery, because it ceased to be a monastery in 1864. And this building is a school, and it was a school, and this building, or one which stood on its site, I believe, was the German army billet. This is where the troops were. Now, in most cases in villages, the German army didn't bother to have a presence, but here it did. How long it was actually used for, I'm unable to say. There's 400 SS stationed not so far from here, according to the memorial book, and the person in charge was an SS captain, was called Kneipfel. Now, I've been unable to locate any more information about this person. He, like many, noted for brutality, noted for a total disregard for human life and comfort. And one thing that he would do, for example, was to not only to steal things from houses that he went to, but also to, for example, to smash the windows to make it colder for the people. Now, obviously, the Jewish population did not have money for heating. It may have been burning old furniture, it may have tried to get wood from whatever means it could do, but that was a very risky thing to do, and wood burns very fast. this idea was just to cause suffering. Many people did die of diseases related to cold and the inability of the body to protect itself. But as far as I can see, there wasn't starvation here. There may have been diseases like typhus, which are caused by unsanitary conditions, but not to the extent you get it, for example, in the large urban ghettos. At the beginning of 1940, kidnappings for taking people away for slave labour began, and people were taken to a quarry, which is about 12 kilometres or so from here, a place called Sandomierz. Usually no transport was laid on, so people had to walk there and then walk back again. And people were also taken to other places such as Kamienia, where there were armament factories. Now the armament factories there were not liquidated until the summer of 1944, and that could possibly be one of the reasons why people survived. That was the best hope for survival with hindsight. Of course, it probably didn't seem so at the time. One of the problems with forced labour everywhere was that people who were forced to work often included the rich, and they were able to buy their way out of it. So the burden fell upon the poor. But sometimes also the poor didn't want to work, and there was one day when nobody turned up for work. So as a result of this, on the 6th of August 1940, early in the morning, the German police came around and forced everybody here to this market square where I am now, and beat them, took them to the quarry, and then increased security to such an extent that people wouldn't try to escape again. Well, that was the idea. It didn't actually completely work, because there were people who did escape, and in one case, when one person escaped, they rounded up his family and murdered them. Another thing the occupiers did was, and it doesn't make much sense, but in March 1940, let's just say that, it's very early days of the occupation, they went into the Jewish library, which was somewhere down there, helped themselves, loaded all the books on a lorry, took them to Sandomierz and burned them. More Jews found themselves here, either because they were rounded up from smaller communities by the Germans and brought here, or sent to places such as Vienna, and this brought the total of Jews living here to around 4,000 people. On the 30th of October 1942, the Germans, aided by Ukrainian or Trawniki auxiliaries and Polish police, collected all the Jews in Klimontów into this square here, about 4,000 people. They did a selection for about 150 young, fit-looking, I should say, males were taken out, and they were sent to labour camps. The others were marched to a place called Złota, which is some distance from here. Probably took them all day. And from there they were taken to a place called Nabrzeżna, which is to the east of Sandomierz, and from there they were loaded onto trains and taken to Treblinka. Now, the journey to Nabrzeżna, I suspect it was on foot, so I cannot believe that they've managed to find transport for so many people. I don't know exactly how it took place, but certainly it was done in two stages. First one was Water, next one to Nabrzeżna. It's about 40 kilometres. That's a long distance to go on foot in a weakened condition. There were some people who came back after the war. Unfortunately, in March 1945 they were murdered by anti-Semites, and after that nobody tried further. But as you can see, the synagogue was done up in the 1950s, and there is a gentleman who over there who runs a museum of Jewish life, and occasionally people do come here. Not much is known about the ghetto. The ghetto, of course, was open. It wasn't sealed. Very few of the ghettos were actually sealed. Most of them were open, but it was absolutely forbidden to actually leave the town, and that would be on the pain of death. There was a Jewish police here, which was founded in, I think, March 1940. It consisted of 8 people. So there you have the tragedy of the Jewish population of Klimontów. That is why the population is now only 1/3 of what it was before, and that is a pattern which we see throughout Central Europe. If you're interested, you can see lots more on this on my YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/Alan Heath. I have also, if you're interested in travel to places like this, you can see under my travel page, which is www.motorhomefulltime.com, and there's more information there.